going above and beyond, right? Delivering an exceptional hospitality experience doesn't isn't because you are nicer than the other restaurateur. It's because you have such lockdown systems that you have the brain space and you give people authority to go beyond, right? And to pay attention and then you can train people to do that.
Today's episode is sponsored by my good friend Andy Bovender, who is out of the Carolinas. Him and his team have the number one team in 5 different cities in the area, and they've helped more than 5,000 families. So if you have somebody who's thinking about doing a real estate transaction in that area, definitely give them a call to help. Today, I sit down with Susie Adamson and we talk about systems. She's an outstanding coach who has been in the business for more than 11 years, so she has real boots on the ground experience. As well, I want to share a little bit more about our Inner Circle group. It's a group of top performing agents who meet 2 times a month and share best practices. You can be added to the wait list if you head over to realtor180.com or scroll down to the description below and click the link. And as always, I'm your host and San Francisco referral partner, Shawn Kunkler. Susie, thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Shawn.
I'm looking forward to this. I'm so appreciative that Sky introduced us.
Same. This guy makes good connections.
He does, but you have big shoes to fill or footsteps to fill. I don't know what the term is. His 2 episodes are 2 of my best performing podcasts to date, which is
I'm not at
incredible.
all surprised. I recognize one of my friends actually, I think she said this about it, or maybe said it. Anyway, one of his superpowers, I think, is his magnetism.
Yeah.
Right? It's not the right
Yeah.
way to describe. He's so magnetic, and he just like has such positive energy, and he just radiates, good, good vibes and all those things. So I'm
Well,
thrilled that his podcast episodes were so successful.
and as you know, water seeks its own level. And so if he's recommending you, I was like, of course, I'd love to have Susie on.
And he said, wonderful things about you. So I'm like, yeah, of course I'd love to be on.
I appreciate that. So in a couple sentences to just get the listeners up to speed really quick, who are you and what do you do?
Okay, so I am a licensed real estate agent. I have been a real estate agent for 11 years. I started out my career in northern New Jersey, just outside of New York City. And because of my connections within the community and my involvement there, and then also all the ways that I set up my business, found great success there. I left New York or New Jersey area a year and a half ago to move to Philadelphia area. And so I got to work with Sky a little bit more in that capacity. And now I'm a full-time real estate coach. And my specific lane is not helping people to grow their business in terms of sales, but to really take what they are doing and establish better systems around what they're doing so they're not just operating out of memory and intuition,
Mm-hmm.
and so that they can replicate their success deal after deal, client after client, and so they can go on vacation without their laptop.
Tell me what that's like.
It's so good. It's so good. I've been able to do it and it's a dream and I want that for everybody.
I think that's an amazing open with that part and then backfill it with everything else.
Yeah,
Because
yeah. So, I mean, I
agents are,
come from a background of business, right? So, I
yeah.
started out in the corporate world. I was in account management and planning and in advertising. So, from the very beginning of my career, I had been a checklist person, I had been a
Mm,
systems person, I'm a process person, largely because if I didn't have those things, I would fall apart. I
yeah.
am not someone with a good memory. I have a terrible memory. It gets worse and worse every day. And so I literally, like, I had a coaching call this morning where the person was like, "Thank you so much for connecting me with so and so." And I was like, I was literally thinking, I need to connect you with so and so. I had forgotten I'd already done it. So if I didn't have, systems to keep me on track, I would really not be able to be successful.
Yeah.
So, I can't even remember what your question was, Sean. I've been having this all day. To my point that I have a terrible memory.
Hey, you're preaching to the choir. And mix that with I have ADD, so I'm like,
Yeah,
it's a
right.
mess
I
inside
have
of my
two
brain.
family
It's
members with ADHD, so I'm telling them all the time, if you don't have a good checklist, you're screwed. Um, anyway, what was your question? I can't remember
I
now.
actually lost it myself, but it was a really good answer, and I was definitely
Oh, I
appreciating it.
started out in business. I established checklists. I'm always thinking there's got to be a better way.
Same.
So I'm always trying to find a better solution. I'm super impatient.
Oh my
I'm
God. Yeah.
fundamentally like, if I have to do something, repeat something again and again, I'm like, there's got to be a shortcut because I cannot stand to type this exact same sentence every single time
Yeah.
or type this, cut and paste this same email. I love templates. I love shortcuts. I love Zapier. Like anything that's going to make my day a little bit faster and easier, I'm all
Yeah.
about it. I don't feel like I have to do more every day. I feel like I have to do what I do in less time, with
Yeah.
less stress, with less energy, so that I can shut my brain down at some point and recharge, you know? And I want that for every real estate agent.
That's so interesting. It's interesting the way you saying that because I feel like I'm super impatient and I'm incredibly lazy. Like I work really hard,
Yeah.
but I don't want to do extra steps if I don't have to.
Yeah, I
Like,
used to say that I was lazy, and I'm not, and I know you're not, obviously. But I think impatient is the right word. Like, just
yeah. And
you
if
know,
it's almost like with a huge efficiency
yes, yes.
looming over everything.
I'm unwilling to spend my energy pointlessly. Like, I
Yeah.
really want to. I want to be a good shepherd of my resources always, right?
Hmm.
Whether it's my time, energy, or money. I want to use the resources I have because I feel like it's a great privilege to have those resources. And
Yeah.
I want to exercise them to the best ability that I can. I want to maximize all of those resources to do the most good with the time that I have.
It's such a good way. It's I've just never, I guess, thought about it or had this type of conversation around it. But that totally makes 100% perfect sense to me. I feel like
Yeah.
I'm
I
very
hate
much,
waste, right? I don't want waste.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
Like I don't like buying. I would buy the thing that's better and going to last longer because
Right.
I don't want to have to break. I don't want it to break and me dealing with
Right.
having to reorder it and wait and then reinstalling whatever the thing is. Like that to me is just painful and it's
Yeah.
such a waste of time, money, and energy and like
Exactly. And in
mental
the same
bandwidth.
way, like if I don't spend the time up front to build a solid foundation of something,
Yeah,
I'm just going to waste so much time in the long run. I'd rather spend the time now, get the
it's
good
4:15.
foundation. I liken this to like my son loved Legos back in the
Mm,
day, and he knew to build that like good base for his structure, right? If you didn't do that, then the building's going to fall down. Whatever you build is going to fall down. So hold on, let me turn off my. I'm sure you're going to edit this, right?
we
So
are.
I'm going to turn off that time thing. I forgot to turn it off before. It's one of my little hacks, actually. I learned this from Sky's sister. Is the announce the time feature on your Mac, and so it tells me every 15 minutes what time it is. It actually keeps me. This same thing is like having a timer for things.
Yeah,
It
interesting.
makes it so that I can be present in whatever I'm doing, right? Instead of
Yeah,
constantly checking what time it is because I'm chronically late because I get absorbed into something and I don't realize time has passed.
yeah.
That happens, right? I mean, literally, like I'll be like, "Oh, it's 4:16. I have to get on a call in 2 minutes," and then I'll be like, "It's 4:20. How did that happen?" So thank God my clock. I started out with it announcing every hour, which is what Eliza has. And then I
Yeah,
changed it to every half hour. And now I have it every 15 minutes telling me what time it is, which is
that's
super helpful.
incredible. That's interesting because I similarly I just will get lost doing something, or your brain goes on a tangent and you're
Yeah,
like, oh, I mean, for me, I'm like, oh, let me look up this property. Oh, that reminds me of my clients. Did they like? And I start looking up all these other properties, and
totally. It's
it's
so easy to go down a rabbit hole.
it's I recently picked up meditating again, but not dissimilar. You have the little there's different styles of meditation, but I've been doing it more of an empty mind where you just have a bell that dings every I think it's like 30 seconds or so, and that's just to pull you back in.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
it kind of feels like the same thing is
Yes,
like here the time and you're like, "Oh, shoot, I actually need to finish this task."
yes, yes.
When you were actively selling, I guess I'm going to ask you a couple questions and you can unpack them any way you want. Did you right away start creating systems, or did you hire that first person and then have them basically run around behind you copying whatever systems you were doing?
So I started out in real estate 11 years ago, and from the very beginning, I was on a team to
Mhm.
start. And when I got on the team, there were already some systems in place, but I really did apply my background to fine tuning their systems, right? So making sure that our files were set up in a way that the entire team, and it was a small team, so there were maybe 5 agents on the team, and making sure that we could all navigate the shared resources in the most efficient way. Again,
Yeah.
like trying to find the ways to shave a little second here and there. And then when I became a solo agent, which was just a year later, I was like, right away, like, I got to create checklists because if I don't have a checklist, I don't even know what I don't know. Do you know? Like, so I want to make sure that I do the whole checklist, run it up against other people, see what I'm missing. Every time I would go to a training, I would like add little bits and pieces, take out things, right? Stress test it.
Yeah.
But that way, I wasn't constantly wondering, what am I forgetting? And what am I supposed to do next? Right? So like I think agents get started in this business. Real estate school, as we all know, is only to keep you out of jail. So
Pretty much.
it doesn't tell
Yeah.
you how to run a transaction. And you're just kind of winging it. And you're hoping you're not going to get sued. and,
Yeah.
or, best case scenario, you just at least get the client to repeat business and give you a good review. And so I also, when I started real estate, I just from the very beginning had the goal of elevating the profession,
Mhm.
right? Like we all know a lot of realtors who are not great at their jobs. And I had moved quite a few times before I became a realtor. And I thought, not out of arrogance, but like I could do that better. Do you know?
Yeah.
Like I was, when we were in North Carolina, I had a newborn baby. And I swear to you, we saw over 100 houses. And that was no favor to me. That was not like a positive thing, right? I kept thinking I would walk into a house and it would be really dark. And I had said to my agent, I want a lot of natural light. And I thought, why didn't she preview this? Why didn't she know that this was not a good fit? And meanwhile, I'm carting around this baby. Like it was a colossal
Yeah.
waste of my time. And so I that taught me right away that there's a better way. I moved to New Jersey and the agent did simple things like she had a snack bag in her car when we did the area tour. And I was like, that is so smart because I get low blood pressure or low blood sugar and I would get hangry. So smart, like details.
Yeah.
And so I just think that having a checklist keeps you from it's part of like unreasonable hospitality if you've read that book.
I haven't, but it's actually been recommended more than a
Yeah,
couple
so
times.
I mean, basic premise is just going above and beyond, right?
Yeah.
Delivering an exceptional hospitality experience isn't because you are nicer than the other restaurateur. It's because you have such lockdown systems
It is.
that you have the brain space and you give people authority to go beyond, right? And
Yeah.
to pay attention and then you can train people to do that. So I think if you want to actually elevate your profession, if you have high standards, you have to have checklists. You have to have processes. that are codified and documented and
Yeah.
repeatable and consistent. And then, we talked about how their agents get to a point where they bump up against a growth block.
Yeah.
And I think that's because most people realize you can only get so big on your own,
Mm-hmm.
winging it, right? Using what's in your brain and hoping you'll remember every single time the same
Yeah.
exact thing. But then how are you going to onboard somebody? How are people don't hire an admin because they're like, how can I possibly stop the bus while it's running in order to change the tires or get a new driver? I can't do that. I don't have time. Or I don't know what work I would give them. I have no idea what of the 100 things that I do for a listing I could possibly delegate because it's not written down and they've never gone through and said, this thing, this thing, this thing, anybody can do. I don't have to do this stuff.
Yeah. It's all true.
I will say, though, to your second question, did I have this from the beginning? Yes. But also, did I make it better over the next 10
Yeah.
years? 100%. I didn't have an operations manual for the first 10 years, right? When we got our first virtual assistant, I tightened up so many of our operations because
Yeah.
I was like, I don't want that person to have to write a single email from scratch. I want them to know exactly what comes next. We need to finally institute status meetings. We had tried to do it for years.
Yeah.
And one reason or another, it didn't work. But I'm like, if we're going to be on the same page and everyone's going to know what to do, we need to do this Monday, Wednesday, Friday at minimum.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it
Yeah.
got better and better.
100. Like everybody has to be on that same page, knowing what they're doing for that client or for that experience. It's in having done this podcast now for 2 years, and I think you're probably around the 110th guest. I've picked up a thing or two, and the number one mistake agents make is they try to hire somebody like them, meaning they hire another
Hmm.
another fellow colleague who then runs parallel, but then they shortly fire them or they part ways because one pisses off the other for not doing it, for basically not reading their mind,
Yeah, yeah,
is what happens. And then those ones that do succeed or do better or have less stress, they hire somebody who's just ops, and then their first project is creating the systems. And then
yes,
those who really get it dialed in are the people I sit down with who have, like Andy Bovender. He's got 37 people on his team, and they've helped 5,000 people
right.
buy and sell homes. It's like they clearly took it to a next level. But I know for me, a few years back when we really started to go really detailed on the listing checklist.
Hmm.
I remember I stopped waking up at 3 in the morning going, oh, damn it. Did
Yes,
I send that document
yes.
to so and so and
Yep.
and then having to email myself? That totally stopped.
Yeah. For me, it was always the certificate of occupancy form that we had to fill out for the township, and we were always submitting it late and having to pay the rush fee. It was so frustrating, right? Because
I've
it was
paid
like
so
the
many
most
rush fees.
important thing. So many rush fees, and I mean, obviously it's a waste of time, but it's also a waste of money, and then it adds up, and
Yeah.
then you have to tell the client you feel stupid that you forgot this thing. It's a simple item on your checklist, so
Yeah.
yeah, it's I hate that middle of the night waking up, and
Awful.
it's avoidable.
You know the other thing, having a really good like dialed in checklist that it did for us. So we do a Monday Thursday transaction check-in call,
Hmm.
and the ops manager will basically run through the checklist of everything that needed to have been done in the prior week, checks in to see if it was done, and then assigns whatever the next thing is. So
Hmm.
if the individual agent needs to do it, or if she's handling it, or whoever is handling it, and we kind of assign it. Totally lost my train of thought. Completely lost where I was going
Monday
with
and
this, but it
Thursday
was a really good point.
transaction. When the tipping point of when the listing checklist really got dialed in? You were saying
I don't know.
stop waking up in
It's
the
so
middle of the
funny. I
night.
totally lost it.
I did this with Tiffany earlier too. She'd ask me a question, and halfway through my answer, I'd be like, I have no idea what she asked me. Oh, shoot, I hope I'm on track.
I'm usually pretty bad most of the time, but on the podcast, I feel like I tend to be a little bit more dialed in, and I'm like always writing notes to keep track.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I apologize. I've
That's
I've
okay.
lost my train of thought. When you work with clients, do you tend to focus a little bit more on like it sounds like more on the back end of their in figuring out their inefficiencies?
Yeah, so when I first started coaching, I was really all about the checklists. It was just really
Mm,
about like, because what I was finding is sort of the renovation effect, which is like you're in your house, you think, I just need to update this powder room. And then once you start the powder room, you're like, oh my gosh, the plumbing is shot. This house is 100 years old. I got to rip out all the plumbing. Well, if I'm going to do the plumbing, I might as well do the kitchen because it's all attached. And then you're like, shut down. I can't do anything. Forget it. I'm just going to live with this ugly powder room for the rest of my life. And I found that with even with myself when I was doing this system, you start with a checklist. So let's say in the Compass platform, for example,
yeah.
you do the checklist, but then as part of the checklist, you can associate email templates. So then you got
Hmm.
to go and do every single email template you're going to use. Well, the email templates have links to the questionnaires that we send. So then you got to do the questionnaires. And that's where
Sure.
I think if you're doing it right, he can easily shut you down because then you're like, forget it, it's too much. Who has time for this? Who has hours and hours to be creating forms and then email templates and then checklists and then it's just a lot. So I work with clients initially to do that, but then I realized that I need some framework to
Mm,
get them to that point. And part of what I was finding is it's not just about helping people know what to do next. It's about the understanding that part of the reason why we need that at all, because there's going to be some resistance to even applying that because it's a habit change.
100%.
The reason why we need to do the checklist and then use the task list that comes from that and then have the status meetings every week is because otherwise we are distracted all day long, whether you have ADD or ADHD or not. We live in a distracted world. I
Yeah.
read this study that said most office workers, of which we are effectively office workers, can't focus for even a minute at a time. And
Crazy.
so, how do you go through your day and not feel like all you're doing is reacting all day long?
Yeah.
And then people are constantly checking their emails because their email boxes are too full and they're afraid they're going to forget something. They're afraid they're going to miss something. They're under the misconception that email is urgent, which it never is. They're getting texts all day long. They're seeing social media notifications
Yeah.
all day. They're just like swinging. And another statistic I had read was that every time we switch our attention from one thing to another, which is called context switching, we lose a good 20 to 30 minutes of productivity.
Yeah.
And so then I realized before I even get to the checklist and exactly like how to do that, I need to set up some framework for why we even need to be thinking about this, how we need to set a goal, a mission statement so that we have a higher level way to make decisions. We make over
Mm.
35,000 decisions a day. And so, how can we be making those decisions in a way that gets us to our goal rather than just bouncing around like in pinball all day long?
Yeah.
So I do an intake in terms of like what are your specific pain points, and I customize the conversation and the process, you know, to however people need and however they're working. If you've got an admin, that's a completely different path versus if you don't have an admin, right? If you have a team versus if you don't have a team.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, I have a certain process, and then I just kind of navigate depending on what the agent needs. And at the end of it, I just want to make some impact on your life. I want you to feel a little less stressed, a little more in control, a little more confident. You know, you have more tools in your arsenal so that you can say to your possible listing or buyer client, hey, I've got all this stuff set up. Be sure to ask the other agents you're interviewing if they have the same.
Yeah.
and make it a real point of distinction for you in this sea of competition.
Have you been completely neglecting your newsletter, social media, or any of your outbound marketing? If so, I have a solution for you. With little to no commitment, a virtual assistant can jump in and help you in those areas you just don't have the time for. For more information about hiring a virtual assistant, go ahead and follow the link in the description below. Yeah, it's interesting. We always talk about the front end with clients, but we never talk about the back end.
The back end is so important because it's what delivers the front end, right?
It 100%.
Just like a kitchen. If you think the kitchen is the perfect analogy. If you think about
Yeah.
a super successful kitchen, it's all about the back end. Like the back of the house
The
has to
back of the
be
house is more
tight.
important
Yeah,
than the front of the house.
exactly. And
Right.
I'm obsessed with cooking shows, Top Chef, and I love The Bear. I think that is such a perfect illustration of why real estate, needs to operate. That's why Unreasonable Hospitality is such a great
Yeah.
book for realtors to read.
It's funny you mentioned that because there's a restaurant in Trabuco, which is near me, and it's an amazing, just amazing Italian food, and just it's such a nice place, and it's ran by a husband and wife. He's from Italy, but we always sit at the chef's counter, and I look at it. I always sit there as, and I think business because everybody moves around each other with this like amazing efficiency. It's like this beautiful dance that's happening.
Yep.
And I've thought about it a couple times. I'm like, I should bring my team here because everybody's moving in sync and it's this perfectly choreographed dance
Yeah.
of which is all it's all a system unto
Yep.
itself.
If you haven't read the book, I think it's called Work Clean. It's about the principle of mise en place, which is in the kitchen, it's everything in its place and
And it's
making sure that you've got like everything chopped up before you even start the cooking and, knowing that the knives are always in the same place all the time and all of that and how that applies to business. And it's a really good book to read for
Interesting.
anybody interested in systems and operations.
Have you ever watched the movie The Founder
I don't think
about
so.
the McDonald's?
Oh no, I'll have to put that.
It's really good. It's the story of how McDonald's started,
Yeah.
but there's this amazing scene that they basically took they took a drawing. They went to a tennis court, and then they took basically like a drawing of the hamburger station and the fry station, and then they would have people move around as if they were prepping, and they kept moving things to figure out how people can
Yes.
move at maximum speed at
Right.
maximum efficiency without
Yep.
bumping into each other.
Yeah.
But my epiphany from watching the movie was they didn't set out to make fast food in the sense that we know it as like greasy, unhealthy garbage. It wasn't. It was it was created to do food fast,
Yeah.
which is a completely different distinction.
Right.
It was at the time, it was still high quality, it was good stuff, but it was just incredibly fast.
Right.
So if you have that yearn for efficiency, the movie
Yeah.
it goes on a weird trajectory of like a downward spiral of like
What
normal
went wrong?
business movies. But that aspect of it and what they shared in the movie, it was so good because
And
that's
fast food, apart from the negative stuff, obviously, is a great illustration of just like um, the consistency of it, right?
yeah,
The efficiency and consistency and having a certain standard that you can meet every single time.
yep,
Not enough real estate agents think about how important that is as a delivery of their ultimate promise to the client. I mean, client wants to know what you did for my neighbor down the street, you can replicate for me, even though it's a different, there are different variables involved, obviously. But I want to know that the back of the house is running like clockwork, and I'm going to know what's going to happen at every step of the way.
yeah. And actually, that makes a great point because I've lost listings of clients, and this was me just needing to do a better job in articulating this, but who've said, "Oh, we went with this other person because they knew the neighborhood better," and you're like,
That
It's not
wasn't it.
always about the neighborhood. It's about these other components because I've had record sales in areas I've never ever
Right,
sold, nor have ever done business in ever again. And I did it as a favor for that client because I was such good friends with them.
right.
But to your point, it's knowing the systems, it's knowing the nuances of it,
Yeah.
which reminds me of that part that I forgot and I was going to loop back and now I
Yay!
remembered what I was going to say is having checklists. It does 100% free up the bandwidth in your mind. So when you're sitting in front of a client, you can take in everything that they're saying
That's right.
and hear on a different level of what they're saying. You can read their body language. You can kind of see if you're losing rapport. You can
Hmm.
gauge so many other things. Whereas if I'm trying to think of what I need to say next,
Yeah.
rather than having something already pre-rehearsed, I'm way ahead of the game.
Yeah. And that's such a great point because it really is about what can I do to free up my strength, which
Mhm.
for most real estate agents is and should be relationships, right? The relationship
100%.
that you have with your client, the advice that you're giving them or the consultation that you're providing to them, that expertise not everyone can do, or certainly not the same way.
Yeah.
So all that other stuff that is involved in running a transaction and getting it from point A to point Z, you have to be able to farm out. Even if you could do it faster, doesn't mean that it's for you to do. Do you know?
That's the
So
hardest. That's so hard.
it's
You
so
should say
hard.
that again for everybody to hear.
It is so hard for people to let go of the things that they think is only going to take them 5 seconds.
Yeah.
It's going to be free because they're doing it and they're not paying someone to do it, right?
Yeah.
But if you, I mean, the best example I think for me is when I finally started doing grocery delivery. I mean, for many people it was during COVID, but I think for me it was after that. I finally got to the point where I'm like, if I go to the grocery store, I'm not only losing the half hour or 15 minutes of driving, however long it takes you to drive there, drive back, get in and out of the car, um, but I'm losing all the time that I'm wandering around the grocery store, right?
It's
And I'm
true.
probably spending more money because I'm inevitably going to buy stuff that wasn't on my list that I don't need. If I just send the list to somebody to shop for me, I'm going to tip them and pay them. But that money I would have saved in whatever else I would have bought. And in that amount of time, as long as I'm reinvesting that time into something more fruitful, my time is closer to, and most real estate agents' time is closer to, on average or a minimum, $200 to $300 an hour, right?
Minimum. Yeah.
Minimum. And for a lot of people in Compass, particularly, it's higher. My time is like, $400 to $500 an hour. Why in the world would I spend an hour going grocery shopping when, so of course, this isn't going to apply universally to everybody all the time. But for all those people who feel like I can't afford to hire an admin or I can't afford to delegate X, Y, and Z, I really, really think you can't afford not to because then you cannot free up your brain and your time to be more attentive to your clients, to plan, to have, client appreciation things, right?
Yeah.
We hired an admin. The first admin that I hired did not take away stuff off my to do list, but did stuff on my to do list that never got done at all, right?
Yeah.
Like creating a website for me or sending out market reports or doing that newsletter I've been talking about for 5 years prior to that. All those things that sort of are on the back burner that are going to grow your business, but are not part of what I have to do in order to get my business done every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Knowing what you're worth is
Oh, it's
it's
huge.
such a powerful place to start
Yeah.
when you start putting and associating a dollar sign of, yeah, you can do the newsletter and it's going to cost you an hour, but you're like, Do you really want to spend 300-400 bucks
Yeah.
on a newsletter? Because
And
that's
it's not the highest and best use of your time. And if you
correct.
also think about the fact that it's just drawing energy from you, if you think about you are one battery, right? You have one
Yeah.
battery every day. You and you drain all day long and you're draining yourself doing tasks that someone else can do for a lot less. You will get to the end of your battery before you get to things that are more important. Do you know? You
Yeah.
don't have a limited amount of time and energy.
Yeah, they've done studies on our decision making ability in a day. It's very limited.
Mm-hmm.
And in the latter part of the day, you should never do complex decisions. So
Right.
in the same token, don't burn yourself out on doing these little things that are burning out your
Which is
decision
what most
ability.
real estate agents are doing. And then they get to a point where they're burning out
Yeah.
and they think it's because of things that it's not. So I
Oh,
talk to
interesting.
people who are like, I'm so stressed because I hate these documents. And I'm like, all right, well, what else is going on right now? Oh, you have three difficult clients that you're dealing with. Oh, your child is sick. And they're like, no, no, it's not about that. Like, it is. It's all depleting your energy,
Yeah.
right? So if you didn't have a sick child, you'd have more energy to deal with those difficult clients, and then those pesky documents wouldn't feel so onerous. It's not just that. You know what I mean? We're all one person. So like you
Yeah.
can't say it's not about this, it's not about this, it's not about this. It's like all part of the problem. And so you have to take the pieces that you can solve, right? The things that you can delegate, the things that you can have someone do for a lot less. A virtual assistant is like $8 to $12 an hour.
Yeah.
That versus our $300 an hour, for a realtor, like it's not. It just doesn't even make sense not to do it.
My very first hire, gosh, I think I was broke and I was like 4 months in, was a virtual assistant to, because I kept hearing everybody like newsletter, newsletter, newsletter. I was like, all
Mm-hmm.
right. And I started a newsletter, again, like 4 months in, and it's gone out every single month ever since I've been in the
Yeah.
business.
Yeah.
And it's great. And
And you
like,
wouldn't have done it without help, right? You just couldn't
I
have done it.
cannot get it out. If I'm left to my own devices to do it, it never gets done.
Well, it's
And
not
it's
the most important thing in your business, but it is
no, and
an
it's
important thing,
but
right?
it's also it's like too close for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I want it to be perfect and I'll
Right.
noodle on it. And so it's like I'll just destroy it by spending way too
Overthinking
much
it.
time on it and overthinking and not sending it out.
Yes.
Whereas a VA, they're like, hey, it's done, proof it, and then
Yeah.
we'll send it. And it's
I
been
think
a
that's so
savings grace.
important also to recognize what is not going to break your business and not
Yeah.
to overthink it, right? Like that client appreciation party doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to serve booze and good food. Like, right? It's not
100%.
rocket science. Like, don't overthink. The newsletter doesn't have to be perfect. No one is hiring you or not hiring you because of your newsletter. It's just a touch point, do you know?
Yeah.
So like I do think it's so important to like take. I had this coaching client today who's really tying herself up in knots for the many things that are on her checklist. And I'm like, what can you take off because it's actually not making a fundamental difference in how your transaction is
Yeah.
being carried out, right? Is it going to really move the needle on your client satisfaction? If not, remove it.
And there's so much on that list that, to your point, someone else can do it and probably do a better job.
Yes. Or good enough.
Or
You
just
know,
not at all.
I have super high standards. I really do. I think, and I
Me
said
too.
this on Tiffany's call. There's a difference. What I've come to realize is when people say I'm a perfectionist, which we hear all the time, right? I'm a perfectionist. I can't get out of my own way because I'm a perfectionist. And I really think it's important for people to understand the difference between the fact that you think you're a perfectionist is really just fear. You're afraid of making mistakes. it's not an indication of higher standards than someone else,
Hmm.
right? I have really high standards, but I also am more interested in progress than I am in perfection,
Yeah.
right? So I think anyone
Good
who
point.
knows me will tell you I have high standards and I perform with excellence. I do a lot of things with excellence as my standard, but I don't let that stop me from making progress because
That's a
progress is a
great
higher priority for me.
that's a great distinction. Yeah. Huh.
People think that
It's a good one.
perfectionism is a virtue, and it's not.
No, it's a curse.
It, it's just fear.
It totally is. Yeah.
I can see you chewing.
Yeah, no, that one it's true. It's totally yeah. I mean, I know for me it's like if the podcast, for example, I feel very responsible for how is my guest being perceived. And so like I want it to come across as perfect because my reputation is attached to it, which then their reputation is attached to it. And so yeah, I feel I take it like a high level, not just one example, but I take a very high level of responsibility for it. And so which all comes from how it's perceived in the marketplace.
But I bet, the fact that you started it 2 years ago, right? You said 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yeah.
Starting is the hardest part, right?
Yeah.
And then making a commitment to post it however frequently you do.
Once a week.
Then you just got to put it out there, right? It gets to be good enough.
You know
And you
what's
post it.
funny? It just occurred to me, and I completely forgot this. It's good to have a bad memory sometimes. But I was putting it out, and I made a pact with myself to get out of my own way and do it. I told myself, because there's so many times I put it out, and I'm like, oh, I wish I didn't say that, or I can't believe I stumbled over my words like that, or I forgot what I was about to say there. And so what I decided to do very early on is I'm not going to go back and evaluate until I get to 100 episodes. And
Oh,
then it just put it out of mind for me to ever go back and critique myself
yeah.
in a negative way. And I've actually just completely forgot about it and I just kept plowing forward and now I'm over 100 episodes and
That's,
I don't care because
yeah.
however I come across, that's how I am. Like I do
And
make
that I think
mistakes.
is such a powerful recognition that the older you get, the more you embrace, right? I
Yeah.
think one of the most powerful, most well received coaching sessions that I did, um, like a small group coaching session, was one where I got on, I said, you might think that because I'm a process coach, I never forget things or that I'm never late to anything or, never miss an appointment. You might be surprised that I forgot to book a return flight from the retreat a couple years ago. I saw some deal where, if you did separate arms or legs of the trip, then it would be cheaper. And so I booked a flight there, and then I was filling out a spreadsheet for my networking group about what time I was getting in and leaving, and I was like, I can't find my return flight. And at the very last minute I had to book this return flight. Same like month I forgot to book my kids' flights home from college for Thanksgiving.
Oh my gosh.
I got on this call and I said to, all the people listening who are there looking at me as a process coach, that here's all the times I have failed recently
Yeah.
because my systems sometimes fall down. Sometimes, we're human.
Yeah.
And I think when you post an episode where you've made a mistake or where I don't know, you do X, Y, and Z and you make mistakes, I feel like when you just own it quickly, you don't, you take full responsibility. I used to say to my kids all the time, when you make a mistake, not if, when you make a mistake, all I ask is that you own it fully and quickly. Own it fully and quickly, and people will respect you so much more because
Yeah.
everyone makes mistakes. And people love to see you make mistakes, right? Like, people love to see people in any kind of position of authority or expertise
Always.
making mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Own it fully and quickly, and you will get even more respect than if you'd never made a mistake.
It's so true. This has always stuck with me. Years ago, I ran a kung fu school, and my good friend Clint was the program director, and I was assistant program director. And Clint had a big speaking engagement in front of a whole bunch of people, and so he grew up in the church and went to the priest and said, "Hey, you do this all the time. Like, what piece of advice can you give me?" And the priest said, "You are going to screw up. It's how you recover that
Mm-hmm.
makes you a master." And so he was like, I remember him saying that and sharing the story with me, but I remember it like, it frees you up to be like, yeah, you are going to totally
Yeah.
stumble. But as long as you get up and dust yourself off and keep going, no one really stops, and everybody's too worried about themselves anyways.
People are too worried about themselves, but also people want, I think, you know, people that we're working with, hopefully they're not jerks and they're not going to cheer when you mess up. People are looking for you to succeed, right? People, it's
Yeah,
in their best interest when you're working with a client for you to succeed.
100%.
And it is freeing for them to see, oh, you're going to mess up, but you're going to own it. Oh, now
Yeah.
I can trust you, right? Now I know that you're telling me the truth because you made a mistake and you could have totally just defended yourself or hidden it. But
Yeah.
now I know that, whatever you say, you mean, and it is authentic and all those things, right? So I just think that's so important for people to remember that you're going to make a mistake.
Yeah.
Like you said, recover well, recover quickly, learn from it, have humor about it. And then,
Move
like,
on.
progress is the goal.
It totally is, and I'm thinking to to tie it back to our listing checklist, which I think is like 100 and I don't know 37 steps at this point. But at the end of each one, you have stumbles. Like you always have
Yeah.
stumbles of, oh, we should have sent this sooner. We should have done this. So let's move the order of this, or let's
Yep.
add this thing in. And so they're not like big public stumbles, but they're like these little micro falls.
Well, that's the beauty of, like, you got
That's
to go and iterate, right?
exactly. You
Just
have
start.
to, yeah, it's like you're trying to get the car to go faster. And so you have to get it to 150 miles an hour to see what's going to come loose.
That's right. You
Like
have to stress test it, right? Like
you
if you don't,
have to.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to see. I mean, like right now, Compass is in the throes of launching this new client portal. They've
Yeah.
been beta testing it for months now. I've been part of the pilot, and
Yeah.
there's been a lot of stuff broken. I mean, that's the whole point in technology. Everyone knows that. You got to start, you got to put it out there, beta test it, find
Yeah.
all the mistakes, you
Yeah.
know, hopefully, most of them, many of them. You're going to put it out to the wider public and you're going to find a whole lot more, right? And, I said to my client who's introducing it to their seller, I
Mm.
said, just say to them, we just launched this revolutionary tool. There will be bumps, right? There will be mistakes. So bear with us because we're trying to make a better tool for you, but it's not perfect.
And I think that level of just being so upfront with people, of not dissimilar of saying like, oh, I screwed up. I didn't book a return flight. Like I'm human too. It not only just sets context, but it gives you permission. It gives it permission to not be perfect right
Exactly.
out of the gate. Like you've set expectations, which
Yes.
is for any relationship. That's a very healthy way to approach it. Of
Yeah.
like if you're expecting me to be some like magical person who doesn't make any mistakes, like
Yeah, and you know what? I
like
think that would be totally fine to say to your real estate clients too, right? Like, I may
yeah,
screw up along the way because I'm a human, but I'm gonna own it and I'm gonna tell you about it so that I'm fully transparent and then I'm gonna
yeah,
correct it, right? I'm gonna make sure that it's right. And hopefully we won't make any big mistakes, but I'll always be upfront with you and you can trust me. I mean, that's trust in a sales relationship, that's pretty huge, right? Like you have to establish that early on.
yeah, and it's the most fragile.
Yes.
It's the most fragile component of the entire transaction
Yeah.
because if that trust gets broken at all in any way, it just falls
Yes.
apart. The
That's
whole
right.
experience for everybody is bad from that
Yeah.
point forward.
I do want to circle back to the assertion that I made that everybody should hire an assistant, which I
Yeah.
fully agree. I think everyone should hire an assistant. Any agent who's reached at least like a $10 million mark should hire an assistant. That's the
Mhm.
first hire you should have. But I want to say that it is so critical to set up your systems before you do that, because that is
Yeah.
really what got me even tighter dialed into our systems and operations, is to think to myself, if I hire this person, I want them to succeed. So I want to set them up for success.
Yeah.
And I also want to make sure that it is the best ROI for our team, right? So even if it is $8 to $12 an hour, you shouldn't be throwing that away
Sure.
and not being thoughtful and intentional about it.
Yeah. On the other side, in having all these conversations, the people who hire without having any structure, they usually in a month or two will fire that person
Yes,
for them not succeeding
that's
because
right.
they weren't set up properly.
And they, yeah, to your point earlier, like they didn't read their minds,
Exactly.
and it's not, it's impossible to think that an assistant of any caliber is going to succeed without you doing the legwork to make sure that they are going to do that, they have a framework to
Yeah.
succeed.
I mean, it would be not dissimilar from you and I just taking a random job and then having to figure it out as like figure out not only how to do it, but how does that person want me to do it?
Yeah.
And if I don't do it perfect, they're going to let me go.
Well, and I think
Like,
that is part of where I come from. Is I had this job once. I was hired, given very little training or information, and I said at the time, I am very clear that if I succeed, my boss is going to take credit, and if I fail, then it will be on me. And
yeah,
sure enough, right? Like it is, and that's almost it's almost a strategy on a boss's part, right? I don't have to own the failure if something goes wrong.
yeah,
So I think if you are a responsible team leader or manager of any kind, then you really do have to say to yourself, like, um, I take 100% responsibility for making sure that that person is going to do well and
yeah.
succeed.
I had a coach early on who taught me, and this was a great lesson. It's not a people problem, it's a systems problem.
Yes.
And that it took me a while to really internalize it and get it, but then as I started to realize like if the person's not failing
Yeah.
unless they're unethical, they're failing because there's not a structure in place for them to follow. Like
Right.
they're flailing because they don't know what to do.
Right.
But
And if you don't establish standards and expectations and tell people
yeah,
what your values are and what you think success means, right? Like a job well done is not defined objectively. It is
yeah,
completely subjective to every single person.
so
What
true.
I define as success is going to be very different from how you define success, you
Yeah,
know? And any given day, like whenever I look at how some people put out emails, even, I'm like, that's not successful to me. Right? That was not a good email. It wasn't written poorly. There were grammar mistakes or whatever, but it's good enough for them, obviously, or they sent it out. Like, so I think
hmm.
you have to establish your set of expectations and your standards. And if the person's not meeting them, you do first have to ask yourself, was I clear on what I
Yeah,
expected? And did I give them the tools to deliver on that? And then the rest is their responsibility, right? If I set the expectations right and I gave them the tools, then you can legitimately say, then it was their fault, right? They didn't work hard
right.
enough, or they're not a good fit for
Yeah,
this job.
yeah, yeah. It's a very different path to get there than
Yes.
to just kind of like set them free and see what happens.
Yeah. And well, and this also gets back to like most real estate agents don't get into real estate having been managers ever.
No,
And, even in corporate world, people don't learn how to be good managers other than by trial and error. So I feel like most real estate agents get into real estate because they love people or they love houses or both. And I don't really love houses. I don't really care about the house that much. I've learned to appreciate homes, and I don't like all people. Not really. I'm not always a people person. I like the people I like. But I really love to do a job well. And I
yeah,
also think real estate, as we know, is like one of the most important jobs. It really is. And I think it is so undervalued.
same.
It is most people's greatest financial decision or investment. And it is where you raise your family. It's your home. I mean, it is so important. And there are so many real estate agents who treat it like a job, who don't have a high level of integrity, who don't have high standards about how they deliver service, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we've all worked with them. And I think it's a travesty. And it really leads to the public thinking that we don't earn the money that we make because they don't see how important the job is because we don't act like it. You know, a lot of our peers don't act like it's an important job to do well.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, there's something like 2.5 million realtors across the nation, and
And
we're,
only a tiny fraction who are doing it well,
although
right?
everybody has in their signature their 1%.
That's like when you go down the streets of New York and every shop has the best coffee in the world.
Oh my God, that's the best scene in Elf ever.
It is true. It's like, oh, well, according to whom? I mean, it's the fine print, right?
It totally is. Well, I certainly appreciate this, and I appreciate what you do, and I love that you're raising the bar for the industry.
I hope
And
so.
I genuinely appreciate that because I think there's room for all of us to do what we do a little bit better each day, and change the reputation that we all carry in this industry.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate what you're doing and having conversation about it. So,
Thank you. Well, Susie, that's a wrap. Thank you.
thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk to new people that I don't know.